The ship is empty, not quiet. Empty. There is a difference. Quiet means people might come back. Empty means the chairs do not expect anyone. Running from a past that never stopped chasing. Building a life on a ship full of people who were also running. And then the running stops. Not because he caught what he was chasing, because the present finally ran out of places to hide him. Jet leaves, Faye leaves, Ed and Ein gone. The noise that kept the past at arm's length dissolves. And what is left is not peace. It is a question he has been outrunning since the first episode. Who am I when the story I left behind is the only story that still feels real? When the present collapses, the past stops being a memory. It becomes the only place that still feels like home. Not because it was good, because you know how to survive there, and survival, even painful survival, feels safer than the terrifying work of becoming someone new. The real folk blues. She comes back. Julia. Not as a person, as a door. A way to return to the identity he knows how to wear. The syndicate did not pull him back. He chose to go. Because the present offered him uncertainty. And the past offered him a script. And when both feel like death, you pick the death you recognize. Nietzsche asked, if you had to live this life again, exactly as it happened, forever, would you? Most people say no. Spike says yes, not because his past was good, because it was his. Because the violence made sense, because he knew his lines, his role, his ending. The eternal return is not a curse when you are more afraid of the new life than the old pain. Transformation requires something most people cannot give: ego death. The willingness to sit in the space between who you were and who you might become, with no script, no identity, no certainty that the new self will ever feel as real as the old one. Spike stands in that space for exactly one episode. The folk blues is getting too real now. The bebop is collapsing. He is alone with the question, and he cannot answer it. So he walks back through the door. The relapse. There is a kind of addiction that has nothing to do with substances. Addiction to an old identity, to the familiar shape of pain. Your nervous system does not care if something is good for you. It cares if it recognizes the pattern. The bebop was unfamiliar peace. No stakes he understood. No role that felt real. The syndicate was familiar war. Known wounds. A part he had played so many times, his body remembered the lines. You do not relapse because the past was better. You relapse because your system mistakes familiarity for safety. The shadow. Jung spent his life studying the shadow, the disowned self. The parts you refuse to integrate because they remind you of who you were when you were broken. Integration is not about making peace with the shadow. It is about letting it transform, letting the syndicate self, the violent self, the self that loved her and lost her, letting all of that become compost for something new. But Spike does not integrate. He returns, and the shadow does not follow him. It becomes him again. That is the moment he dies, not in episode 26. Here. Bad faith. Sartre called it bad faith, pretending you have no choice so you do not have to face your freedom. Spike tells himself the walk is inevitable, that the past has claimed him, that he owes the dead something only his death can pay. But that is a story. A story he tells himself, so he does not have to admit the truth. He chose this, not because he had to, because choosing the uncertain future, the rebuilt self, the life without a clear ending, felt worse than dying. Buddhism teaches, clinging creates suffering, not the thing itself. The refusal to let it change. Spike clings to the Julia he remembers, the love that defined him, the syndicate version of himself. And the clinging turns memory into mandate. He does not go back to save her. He goes back, because without that story, he does not know who he is. And not knowing feels like annihilation. The choice. Camus said the only real question is whether life is worth living. Spike answers no, not because life is unbearable, because life without a script, without the identity he built in blood, feels like a slow erasure. So he chooses a fast one, with control, with meaning, with the only ending that still makes sense. Revolt would have been staying, living without resolution, letting the mess of the present slowly become a new story. But revolt requires courage Spike does not have. So he surrenders and calls it fate. Here is what he could have done. Stayed on the Bebop. Let the emptiness teach him something. Grieved the crew, the life, the version of himself that needed them as a buffer. Let the Julia he loved stay in the past instead of turning her return into a reason to erase his future. Built a new identity, small and uncertain, that did not require violence to feel real. But that path had no script, no climax, no clean ending, just the slow, unglamorous work of becoming. And Spike could not tolerate it, so the tragedy is not that he dies. The tragedy is that he mistakes control for courage. That he chooses the past because the future asks him to become someone he has never been. That he walks into the Syndicate Tower not to finish the story, but to avoid starting a new one. You are carrying the same choice, not his circumstances, but his question. Do you stay in the wreckage of the present and let it reshape you? Or do you return to the past because at least you know how that story ends? Change does not feel like freedom. It feels like standing in an empty ship with no coordinates. It feels like the death of every version of yourself that made sense. It feels like choosing uncertainty over the one script you know by heart. But that is the only transformation there is. The kind that requires you to let the old story end without knowing what the new one will say. Now, ponder this. If change felt like death, would you